Hello, this is Jackie Moore, and I'll be covering Chapter 8 in this podcast. And as you can see on this first slide, we have a variety of objectives for this chapter. Before we get started, I've heard how much you all like my jokes, so I thought I would start with this one. What are the 4 P's of marketing? Okay, marketing jokes, what can I say? What do we already know about product management? We already know that it's critically important that products have a strong value proposition. We've previously defined what marketers mean when they use the word product. It's not only tangible goods, but also services, ideas, places, people. When marketers use the word product, they mean all of these things. Obviously, physical goods are tangible, but then we have a variety of intangible goods as well. If you need to review that broad definition, please do so from Chapter 1. Products from a marketing perspective are comprised of 3 layers. At its core, the purpose of any product is to solve customer needs. This is called the basic benefits, or the problem being solved. Whenever marketers think about their product, it helps to think of it in terms of the needs being met because it helps us understand the customer perspective, and it gets us out of thinking about our product simply in terms of the product category. The actual product is comprised of the product itself, which is typically described by a series of attributes. These attributes are sometimes called features, but the actual product may include the packaging, the brand name, the product quality, and even the design or aesthetic appearance of the product. The augmented product refers to characteristics that occur after the product is purchased. For high involvement goods, this might include the warranty, the repair and maintenance after the sale, any installation that needs to be done, follow-up customer support, or any follow-up marketing that happens after the product is purchased. Each of the next slides provides a written description of these 3 layers with an example. One of the most important parts of understanding marketing is thinking about how products can be classified and what those classifications mean for the company's marketing strategies. There are 2 primary ways to classify consumer goods. First classification is based on how long they last. Durable goods obviously last for a long time. This is a continuum, whereas non-durable goods are considered to be consumables in the short term. This co-varies quite a bit with the concept of involvement that we talked about in consumer behavior. Another classification is based on customer shopping behavior. And what we see in this classification is there are 4 different types of goods that we'll go into shortly. As I mentioned, durable goods essentially last over a period of months, years, or even decades in the case of washing machines or dishwashers. And what you see in terms of marketing implications is that because these are high involvement goods, customers need a lot of information. We might get this information through a frequently asked questions website. And because they last a long time, the issues that occur after the sale are critically important. Non-durable goods that are consumed in the short run are typically low involvement. The marketing implications on this is that consumers frequently use a heuristic to purchase the good, whether it's a brand loyalty heuristic or a low price heuristic. And distribution is critical to get these non-durable goods in the customer's hands. So wide distribution is very common. And because consumers won't spend a lot of time and effort in considering non-durable purchases, their past experiences are critically important. The second classification is based on how consumers shop for a good, and what you see is the first category of products under this way of classifying goods is called convenience products. convenience products are frequently purchased goods that have a minimum of comparison to other products in the category and minimum effort. And you see some examples here on the slide. I would like you to focus not only on what the definition of the convenience product is, but also the marketing implications. Because these convenience products are typically non-durable goods, the marketing implications are very similar to low involvement. We need wide distribution, frequency of reminder advertising, popular brand names, and oftentimes signs at the point of purchase to draw the customer's attention. Signs at the point of purchase are sometimes called shelf talkers. Shopping goods are purchased with considerable time and effort comparing price, attributes, and quality among alternatives. Again, when you think of our consumer behavior chapter, this would be based on the evaluation of alternatives where consumers will compare an evoked or consideration set of brands across multiple attributes. And because of the effort involved in comparing brands, it's very important that retail salespeople be quite knowledgeable and able to answer customer questions. And it's also important that consumers have the opportunity to touch, see, or try the product at the point of purchase. For example, taking a car for a test drive, or being able to demo a new pair of skis or a mountain bike. Specialty products are very unique, and essentially specialty products are so unique that consumers typically do not spend a lot of time shopping. They are not looking at substitutes, and they often buy based on brand loyalty or the cachet of the brand name. Rolex watches are a great example here. And one of the key marketing implications for specialty goods is that in order to retain their specialness, very restricted distribution and high prices are critically important. What do we think is special? Things that are rare, hard to get, expensive, that signal how special they are. A fourth category of goods are what are called unsought goods, and I generally don't spend a lot of time on these in class, primarily because these require a good deal of personal selling, and to be honest with you, oftentimes marketing gets a bad reputation because of the pushiness of salespeople in trying to sell these types of products. One of the most important aspects of any product manager is how they manage the innovation process. The lifeblood of any company is a steady stream of new innovations that are introduced over time. Innovation from a customer perspective is based on how much does their consumer behavior need to change to use the new product. And as you see, there are three categories of innovations on a continuum: continuous, dynamically continuous, and discontinuous. Continuous innovations are often called incremental, which means they have minor changes in the product. Oftentimes these minor changes might be new features that are added, as in chocolate Cheerios. These modifications may lead to new product varieties at the shelf, and the most important aspect of this is that consumers don't need to learn anything new. The change is minimal. And with these incremental innovations, we do oftentimes see knockoffs come into the marketplace. The next category of innovation is what's called dynamically continuous. And the words on your slide here say a pronounced modification to an existing product. What this essentially means is that consumers have to have a moderate amount of learning or behavior change. So they have to rethink what they're doing or how they're doing it. And an example might be, for example, in the women's shaving market, we frequently see products come out that have different types of handles or different types of devices, because the angles with which women have to shave over oftentimes requires different types of blade shape or handle shape. Discontinuous innovations are radical, breakthrough, or disruptive innovations that create major changes in the way consumers use products. And because of these major changes, consumers have to engage in a great deal of new learning. So, for example, if we're talking about the car industry, if I go back a slide, a continuous innovation in the car industry might be bigger cup holders or bolder colors of cars to match changing consumer tastes and preferences. A dynamically continuous innovation might be a hybrid vehicle where consumers are still driving on the road, pushing on a gas pedal, going to the gas station to fuel up. A variation between dynamically continuous and discontinuous might be an electric vehicle where consumers are still driving on the road, but instead of gas, they're plugging in their vehicles, which requires some changes in behavior just to make sure that they don't run out of charge. But an even electric vehicle is still driven on existing roads with a steering wheel and a gas pedal. Discontinuous innovations in the transportation industry might be flying cars, and in fact there are two brands of flying cars. One is called Terra Fugia and the other is called the Mahler Sky Car. And this requires that consumers actually know how to pilot a plane because they fly. Another type of discontinuous innovation in transportation is what's called a jetpack, where truly, like the Jetsons, people would actually put on a jetpack that propels them through the air for flying. And Jetpack International has actually tested their jetpacks over canyons in Colorado. So this gives the range of types of innovation, and each category of innovation does require very different marketing strategies. And again, we try to focus on the marketing implications of these things. In order to bring innovations to market and even to develop them, all companies have a new product development process. And this process can be very detailed in most companies. And in fact, the process usually includes at least 7 steps. Sometimes there are fewer steps for an incremental innovation. Sometimes there are more steps depending on how scientific the company's approach to new product development is. And these phases in new product development are often called the stage gate process, where each of the phases represents a stage, and before the product can proceed to the next phase or stage, it has to clear a hurdle or a set of criteria in order to move through the gate, where the gate is the criteria or the hurdle. So this is sometimes called the stage gate process. And we'll look briefly at each of these 7 phases in product development. And again, this is a very common cycle for all companies. Phase 1 essentially is, how does the company generate new ideas, and where does it get new ideas? And how does it encourage idea generation? This stage gate process is often shaped as a funnel, where at phase 1 we have a very wide net for ideas to come into our new product development process. And the rule of thumb is that for every 100 ideas that come in at phase 1, a company typically will winnow those ideas down so that by the time it gets to stage 7, it perhaps will introduce only 2 of those 100 ideas to market. And unfortunately, success rates are quite low for new products. And so for every 2 ideas that a company commercializes, typically at best 1 of those will be successful. So a company needs to screen a lot of ideas and screen them accurately in order to come up with the one idea that will generate enough revenue to cover the cost not only of the failed idea, but all of the other ideas that a company takes at least partially through the process. One of the most important sources of ideas is market research, and we previously covered market research in Chapter 4. Lead users are defined as advanced customers who frequently try to generate new innovations that solve their own problems because they can't buy solutions on the marketplace. An example of this might be in the manufacturing industry, where if a company like Taco Bell decides that it wants to introduce Doritos Taco Locos, Loco Tacos, it might have difficulties manufacturing those taco shells with the nacho cheese seasoning. And in fact, in this case, Taco Bell did have to invent new seasoning equipment in its manufacturing line in order to create those tacos, the taco shells. So Taco Bell would be considered a lead user because it didn't buy its manufacturing equipment from its usual suppliers. It in fact invented its own manufacturing equipment. And in this case, it could be that if Taco Bell is highly successful with this manufacturing, it could license it to competitors, likely in other industries or other markets, who have a similar need for seasoning but wouldn't be considered direct competitors. Maybe they sell it to Keebler to help in coating cookies with powdered sugar or something like this. One of the key trends that is not discussed in your book here is customer co-creation, which is the idea of using customers to help come up with new products. Customer co-creation is actually different than just getting ideas from customers. Customer co-creation essentially means engaging customers deeply in the product development cycle. And sometimes this is also known as crowdsourcing. And in the software industry, open source is a really popular way to generate ideas for new software features. Phase 2 essentially means out of all the ideas that we've generated in Phase 1, now we're going to somehow test those concepts. And those concepts can be tested in focus groups or through different concept testing methodologies. And also companies need to know if the new product concepts are even technically viable. So if a company has an idea for a new form of transportation, but we really don't have the proper technologies in place, it might put that idea on the back burner for a while. Phase 3 in new product development essentially is to start thinking about marketing strategy. And the reason this is thought about so early in the process is because we know that companies don't want to develop new products if there's not a significant market segment that's interested in that product. So when we talked about market segmentation and determining the size of various segments, what we see in new product development is this forecast is critically important. We'll talk a little more about forecasting in Chapter 11. At this point, the company needs to think about how the product would be positioned relative to both direct and indirect competitors. And for many companies, distribution and advertising takes a long time for planning. In fact, oftentimes ad space is bought a full season in advance, and if a company is planning to roll something out, say for a holiday season, working with retailers in advance so that they have purchased and planned for that product on the shelf, sometimes up to a year in advance, is necessary. Marketing strategy may involve green marketing in the sense that messages about sustainable product development are critical. And as we've seen previously in Chapter 1 and in Chapter 5, this whole green and sustainability movement is really changing the way companies think about product development. The next step is a very strict financial analysis about what the anticipated profitability of the new product will be. And in this particular scenario, all of the tools that you've previously learned in your accounting classes and finance classes, such as computing a payback period, net present value, and return on investment, are critical. It's interesting that in the electric vehicle market, Chevy Volt spent $1.2 billion in the development of that electric vehicle. And the estimates are that the variable cost to produce each vehicle is approximately $20,000. And so based on the forecast for electric vehicles in the United States, which is modest at best, many people question whether Chevy will even have a reasonable payback period, and its net present value is likely to be negative, begging the question of why would companies pursue this market. Now, the long answer, of course, is that we've talked about disruptive technologies, and if the U.S. car companies don't enter the electric vehicle market, it could be that they find themselves very much behind as technology develops in that area, and they're never able to catch up. Industry experts believe that Toyota is so far ahead on its economies of scale and learning curve on hybrid and electric engines that it will be nearly impossible for U.S. car companies to catch up, even if they get to the third stage, third generation technologies the way Toyota is with its Prius today. Another part of this rigorous financial analysis in Phase 4 is assessing the degree to which the new product may eat into sales of the company's existing products. This is known as cannibalization. So when a company introduces a Chevy Volt, to what extent would that actually cannibalize sales of other products in the Chevy vehicle line? There are types of research available that can help a company estimate where brand switchers are likely to come from. And in this particular case, the data show that brand switchers to Chevy Volt typically were moving away from other companies' products. And so cannibalization was very low within the GM lineup. Whereas in the case of the Toyota Prius, when the Prius fully electric car came out, it did cannibalize more from the existing Prius line than from other manufacturers' products. The next stage is technical development, and this is where engineers work on prototyping the product. And of course, some of this marketing strategy in Phase 3 and technical development in Phase 5 may go on concurrently. It's interesting to note that in the case of the Taco Bell Doritos Loco Taco, they tried 30 different prototypes of that shell before they were able to get one that actually held the seasoning properly, bended appropriately to create a taco without breaking, but still had the right amount of crispness that customers expect with Doritos. So these prototypes are critically important in terms of nailing down the actual manufacturing of the process. And for service-type industries, the whole operations of the service, or for web-based companies, knowing how the websites will work in advance is key. What we see right now with a lot of the online health insurance exchanges is that the prototypes were not tested extensively enough, and they've had significant issues in the marketplace. I see that I have skipped steps 6 and 7. Let me just do those orally real quick. I apologize for this. Phase 6 is test market, where a company deploys its marketing and product in a handful of cities that provide representative and relevant data about how well the marketing and the product will perform. These test markets are chosen very carefully because we do want to have a target market that is representative, A media market where the marketing strategies can be isolated from other big metropolitan markets, and an area where competitors aren't likely to come in and run an aggressive campaign to try to potentially undermine the validity of the test market data we're collecting. Retail partners are chosen very carefully in test markets to pick retailers who really will support the new product rollout, because if our best retailers can't be successful with our new product development, it really begs the question of how viable the new product is. And the test market data essentially provide an opportunity to save a lot of money on a national rollout if the test market shows that it's not successful, or more typically to make modifications to the product and to the marketing in order to create a greater chance of success. Step 7 then is the national rollout, and it could be done on an international basis as well. Oftentimes companies try a national rollout first, as in the case of the Apple product, simply because the supporting infrastructure needs to be staged in such a way that the company has success. National rollouts can be very expensive in terms of marketing and retail sales support and questions that come into the company. So a company needs to make sure that it is staffed up appropriately and that its manufacturing is in line to support the anticipated volume. This will end podcast 1 for Chapter 8.